From the wall to the keep, through cathedrals and catacombs, unto ice and ember, where dragons slumber. It was there darkness held the world. Though the cold winds bite, a cinder never dies. This has been my journey into Dark Souls 3. My name is Ice, and now for an apology. It's been a long while since part 6. Things had to fall in place for me before I felt like moving on with this project, and, well, this is the end. You guys have tagged along from the very infancy of this channel over 4 months ago, and have since patiently let me simmer in shadows and do other things in the meantime. So, let's pick back up. We left off having finished Ashes of Ariandel, and now venture to the end of the world. Well, FromSoft certainly wasn't pulling any punches or hidden meanings here. This harrowing vista, land swallowing itself, an extension of the kiln of the first flame, where all life converges on one point. Churning buildings in the backdrop, and one feeling hammering at my mind. The same philosophy I mentioned back in episode 1. See, there's nothing left. No more sights, the remnant beauty of this ashen world giving way to something new. And it just so happens this casualty must claim one final victim. Myself. I step out into this barren plain, ash drizzling, falling like snow, the emblematic flurry of white that spells death and signifies renewal in our world, and one onlooker. She's just like me. For real. I pressed on, looking down a sheer cliff, and a remembrance of one we saw in episode 2, the prick in a red hood, GAEL. Mention of this figure only increases, and within me boiled excitement. FromSoft's laid so many secrets, treats, and tricks along this winding road, but of course, there had to be more. And immediately, as I lay into the path, a gangbang ensues. I lay waste to the magic users, as you should know, I hate magic, and in the corner of my eye, an irresistible glint. Every single insane gag that From could have cooked up was placed right in this section, one after another, immediately acclimating you to what this area was. It wasn't the meticulously sectioned off levels of Lothric, the distinct enemy types seen in every area, and their layouts guiding you along the critical path. Here, my engine to move wasn't to explore, it was for survival. And as this path pushed me along, a tower crumbled, urging me to pass through, and I was met by a hunched-over figure, consumed by what seemed to be a red bulb rooted to the ground. Again, a screech. The magic turret rained down streams of light on my position, but seemingly ignored the ailing, half-consumed human. Thus, a connection. I bolted quickly to the being, and as I neared it began to lurch, giving me all I needed to know. If it moves, it must die. Turning around revealed those turrets seemed to be tied to the presence of the other things. The more you know. I ventured back into this church and found the tower that crumbled left a massive gash and also formed a bridge to an overlook. This led me to a kneeling figure, a man clad in full body armor of no particular renown, but nonetheless a man who's surviving here, at the end of the world. Talking to him revealed he'd lost his memory, who he was, assigning a new name to himself, Lap, a self-proclaimed hollow, yet one whose sense of duty hadn't consumed his reason. Clearly a man of sheer determination and will, a will to resist losing what glimmer of himself exists within this husk of tin. I had to see this journey through, and he also name-dropped the DLC. I continued on and was subsequently tackled off a cliff. There's a lot of falling here, isn't there? But out of desperation, this run ended here. I returned back to the bonfire and realized there's only been the first one this whole time. Talking again to the hag also revealed a new option, and she had this to say on Lap's little name drop.
Past this heap of rubbish as far as one can go. But you'd better think twice. The Forsaken Ringed City was walled off by the gods to contain the pygmies. And the dark soul is better left well alone.
Beyond this rubbish lies more. She even mentions the Dark Soul. It's real? A physical property we can acquire? I just thought it was a cool edgy name, but let's not get distracted. Another steep fall, and before me, a fallen windmill. Who knew the Dark Souls world cared about sustainable energy? As well, Lap, hunched over, purveying the land, destroyed buildings, giant roots, and yet again, another angel. I ran desperately, searching for the cocoon, or whatever they're called, and stumbled across a collective nightmare, a poison swamp. So I cornered myself and ran. Returning to Lap, I decided to stop and chat, coming away with some valuable information. Below it all, the ringed city. I scoured around cliffs and found a branch, which led me to a couple deaths, but on one respawn, Lap had changed position. You know what that means. Dialogue. This time, he offered me a gift, a whole Titanite slab. I'm starting to like this dude. Finally, this fourth trip, I landed on the branch and also met face to face with this bulbous asshole and gave it a piece of my mind. This next branch served as a staircase leading me to a fallen tower, and within it, a bonfire, and another steep ledge. The dark beckons. As I peered down, the allure of mystery, an intoxicating stench, one that causes delusion. Jagged rock began to form into the shape of teeth, as the ceaseless erosion created a gullet in this very earth. I leapt into this maw. Plunging into the world's womb, a cradle fostering shattered ruins, monuments to a forlorn time. But even in desolation, what grew were demons. In the saturated black bloomed flame. Two figures identical in shape, pointed bat-like ears, so sharp as if they were horns, vicious teeth to crush bone, and claws that rend flesh. Beings not born of nature, rather to oppose it. Bound by fury, these twins played by no rules, their blood boiling until their skin itself pulsed red. Echoing screeches, scraping claws, and the booming slams of pounded ground assaulted my ears and overwhelmed my senses. In game, I ran, rolled, tried to flee into cover, to no avail. And in real life, I sat at a 90-degree angle, gripping my controller for dear life. Adrenaline. A hopeless rush as I tried to even minorly discern what the was even going on. You see, the plumes of fire, grinding nail on stone, flying brick, the music. It was mesmerizing, awe-inspiring. I fought like hell, dipping, dodging, and slashing in between, weaving slams as I defied death as best I could, felling the first of these mighty foes. Finally, one-on-one, this demon gave me some trouble. But as we know, I'd already killed a king. What was another pawn? The last hit delivered, and its corpse slumped to the ground. But a curious case. It still bled. And then, as if a cinder struck kindling, it roared. Now, I said I slayed a king, but a prince? This is a different case. An epic final stand ensued, consuming an ember for some added leverage as I bore my blade's edge once again against even larger fangs and flame. As it rose into the air, tossing magma and revealing lava under its streaking cuts, the rush of tearing winds pressing an onslaught of erupting stone and a fucking laser beam, even the arena was now lit ablaze. This boss is incredible. And I got my ass handed to me in the end. But this time, it was different. I knew what to look out for. Any loud screech meant it's 2-on-1, and waiting for one's flame to settle was enough of a cue to tell me when it's time to kill. So we dueled. Dancing around trails of poison and spewing venom, rolling through scorching fire with the first to fall being the demon in pain, and ending this combat with a gutting blow to the demon from below's head. Once again, met with explosion. The sanctimonious choir, hailing salutation once more to the arrival of this infernal beast, the tension present, unlike anything in this game. An exhilarating brawl between us, those who pursued and conquered the flame, and this born of it. An energetic back and forth as the violin strings shift from harmonizing with the choir into actively pressing against it, as if the music itself were trying to describe two forces, which I interpret as the land which has cultivated and raised us, now fights, attempting to bar us from seeing its final secret, though incapable, as there is no greater teacher than the world. Backed into a corner, in this dark pit, amongst relics lost in time, this demon rests. The last demon, described to be born into this world through chaos, and now fades to ash, lost to its mother's own entropy, its lineage and heritage buried in this black hole, the mouth of the world swallowing itself, their storybook now closed, in order to usher fresh ink. The beauty of Dark Souls. It isn't found in boss fights or even fashion, though I love both. It's found in this free interpretation. Yes, there is set-in-stone lore, but to be honest, I don't give a damn. I have fun believing Emma is a villain's mastermind, and the Demon Prince to me is a culminating moment of this in particular. Having now played Dark Souls 2, the above area is a lot more interesting for me to revisit, because I now see as we delve deeper into this dreg heap, we're falling through different time periods of this game's world. The first stage being castle walls, similar to our first expedition into the High Wall of Lothric, then the second massive plunge we take, leading us to a windmill and a zone derived from an area in Dark Souls 2. Thus my mind can only wander with what this final pit was. I'm not sure yet. Like Lap, it still feels like I haven't found my footing, but have only scratched at the surface. I know there's more video to cover, but I won't let you leave this section without sharing this. The Demon Prince is the best boss I've faced in a video game, headlined by a dynamic duo fight that emphasizes tactical positioning, keeping both targets in frame, focusing on audio cues, and not bearing a silly, ridiculous moveset, allowing the player to memorize and master this fight. The thing is, I don't get off on uber hard bosses. I get off on well-designed duels where the boss sends adrenaline through me, where I face death with a mindset of, I'll be back, rather than shouting, no. But let me refrain. The journey's still far from over, the dust has settled, and the fleeting crackle of this burning warmth wishes me bon voyage. I acquired a banner, and was met with swirling clouds, and a steep ledge with a curious ring in the distance. Again, they flew, taking me by the hands, leading me to somewhere new. The sun shining a brilliant gold, and in the midst of this stone ring, a city stood, here in its own rotting bed. And of course, I'm greeted by 100 dudes penetrating me, and it happened a few times, until the light bulb moment. Ah yes, wall. I hid and cowered, clenched my butt cheeks and ran, and still died. It wasn't until I stopped and thought to myself, what the fuck is it these pricks want me to do? Jump off? I snuck around the side and confronted the giant summoning the archers, and again, perished. The rage I felt from this opening section, to go from Demon Prince to being shot more times than 50 Cent, it was nearly indescribable. So the best way I'd put it is imagine witnessing the birth of your child, and then the nurse immediately throws it out a window. Yes, I wanted to assault my computer and bring the wrath of 1,000 suns down upon this frivolous machine. But, finally, I killed it. At this point, I'm just happy it's over. No more giant, the bridge is safe. I was left thinking about what a tough mini-boss that was and felt security in the thought that it won't respawn. And so, after a wardrobe change, I began my descent into the depths of this city, immediately being presented a quaint church, plus this weirdo hiding around a corner.
Fear not the dark, my friend, and let the feast begin.
I continued on and got into a melee with what I assumed were the inhabitants of this city. Weird little dudes that somehow know how to wield lightning. They're actually pretty annoying, and the power creep of what this DLC was shifting towards began to settle in. And, well, yes, that did just happen, but the more grisly sight was when I respawned and saw it. I couldn't believe it. Just a regular mob, just another Joe Schmo. It wasn't special? The seething fury within my bowels began to churn and rile the most venomous texts I could conceive as I vented my frustrations to my friend. Sorry. I was being punished, but why? Well, I'd forgotten. A simple tactic we all must face one way or another when ferocious opposition or unavoidable doom stares us in the eye. Our final trump card. Run. And now back where I was, I'd been steeled, even spotting enemies far off, simply due to their repugnant breath emitting from my speakers. I hope you're having fun laughing at me. Finally, I was where I needed to be, I killed them all, and also found Lap. Siegbrow. Who is this guy? But forget that. Now that I had a moment of peace, I realized I hadn't been taking in the scenery so much, as I was so focused on survival. Thus, I wandered, and there, something was. Something that looked abnormal, motionless, basking in the yellow sunlight. Some sort of figure. I couldn't make it out, but what I thought I saw was a head, twisted horns, sleeping behind this temple, facing the massive gap in this ringed city's barrier. As if something bled in before. It stayed there. Though it seemed like it were asleep, I was transfixed by it, so I shot it. Still, nothing happened. But I am omnipresent in this case. As rewatching the recording, I noticed this very deep hum. It sounds apart from the general ambiance of the washing winds, as if something were snoring. Could be nothing. I moved on. Following one more wardrobe change, I moved closer to the heart of the city, and... Okay. Having now dueled Soul of Cinder Light, again my mind was blown. They really wanted you to feel fear here, pressure, desperation, but not in the environment, in these goddamn enemies. Like, what the hell is this thing? An arduous battle of attrition unfolded that I won't recount, but it all led me to this talking door, where what we just saw had been illuminated. Now, I wandered more, falling upon death time and time again, meeting yet another one of these talking bugmen, and finally happening on the one thing that offers me sanity and solace, a bonfire. Oh, sweet flame. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Though my mind slips every passing moment, and more of myself is lost in this unforgiving world. Bonfire, you light my heart aflame. Bring me safety and warmth. Hold me tight through my shivering fear. Something's wrong with me. And yet, I persist. My duty drags on, uncovering the secrets of this world, finding its final rest, answering the land's last call, beckoning me in this puddle of filth. There, in its far reaches, stood an electrified axe, and what gripped it tightly, a suit of armor. Though, was this one just a suit of armor? Here, there was no butterfly. See, the previous one was possessed, controlled by the wispy tendrils of the beast that fled as soon as we approached. But this one, alone, as if it were forgotten, having fought off the denizens of this wretched place, and succumbing to exhaustion only for a fleeting moment, as it clearly felt threatened by us. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not a question meant to be answered, or is largely irrelevant, but it did drop its armor. Finally. And now, as I wandered around to the final part of this swamp, a noise, and my screen slightly shaking, and there it was, in its purple brilliance, landing atop a cliff. Midir. So, puzzle time. Yeah, I found this engraving and it meant f*** all to me, so I googled it. My humanity, huh? This ended up leading to the Purging Monument, which was just a PvP thing, and Covenant Altar for something else, yada yada. Dragon. Staring down this decrepit chasm, roaring a sound far more guttural than any beast, echoing and feeling as if it shook the very valley we stood in. Then, with one beat of its wings, a plume of darkened flame. You can sense it in just the clip, that sheer shock and response of, what do I do? As before, run. I made it into this mine shaft, and now facing my seaward moment, the stairs here stacked in a weird fashion with an apparent barrier immediately to your right, a cutout directly in front, and to the left, free stair to roam. I went up and down and up again, traveling in a circle, confused, until I tried, and there he squatted. Oh my god, you're fucking kidding me. Lap managed to recollect who he was, and I as well. The voice finally sounding familiar, and above all, this pose. But this was the end. One last ledge to peek over, one final game to play. Bastard. This ultimately led me to... I'm just gonna run away. So I searched for secrets. After unlocking a shortcut, my nose led me to this room. It felt fishy, so I hit every single statue, and the second one opened. A ladder, and a strange room with a fog wall that couldn't be interacted with. Once again, finding myself gazing upon this dragon. I've got to fight it, don't I? But first, I wanted to investigate this church I saw earlier. Approaching the door triggers some dialogue, and it amped me up with an image of being greeted by another guy in armor type boss. And so, I pushed the door open. A giant fog wall and kneeling statues of knights stood before me, a remarkable walkway into this ornate structure that clearly is hiding more than it lets on. Thus, I enter. And before me was one of those big mamma-jammas delivering a monologue a la Gideon Ofnir before spawning in an NPC, and then the reality of this fight began laying in. Halflight, Spear of the Church, is another random fella boss wielding a purple-tinted moon veil with a cracked-out waterfowl dance weapon art. Incredible. Now, I'm not sure why, but is this like FromSoft DLC tradition to throw in at least one NPC boss? Of course, I found out later in new game cycles afterwards that this is a PvP boss, but still, I just question why. The game's peer-to-peer, latency can be a problem, and I mean dueling is a fun activity, but considering what this boss is stopgag between, it just sours this encounter that much more. Which is why we're moving on and forward, back to the bridge. Not much to really be said, yet. This is just a torso boss, pretty much, but incredibly loud, with its defeat signified by a poise break leading to a hearty stab in the eye, and a tumble into the shrouded ravine below. Now remember that little room? Well, looky here. No fog wall. Whatever could this mean? Yet again, a plunge. Falling deeper into a puddle, and before me, a lump of purple. I stepped slowly towards the dragon, and then it rose. A distant choir and harmonizing brass coupled with the beating percussion as the echoing roar and explosive flame of Midir enveloped the room. Swaths of darkened flame and crushing strength to the point even the screen shook. Blooming flame turning into a brilliant beam of nuclear devastation, this placid lake reflecting the image of this foe, scattered and irrelevant. It was too tense. The jolting camera, my constant misses, and the sheer aggression of this beast. I wasn't able to keep up. Even when I did hit, it was just a scratch. Helplessly, I attached to its leg and tried again and again. I'll tell you, I tried my ass off. There was no prior instance that I could think of that even felt reminiscent. Where did I learn to fight something like this? All I'd known to now was Ancient Wyvern, and well, that was a gimmick. But now faced with this, it fought me like any other knight, slashing and slamming, its claws a sword and its hitboxes a shield. Even if I tried to escape behind it, it'd sweep its tail or fire would lick my boots. There were no visible actions for me to comprehend. Not only being pressured by a constant assault, but pressured by the fear of not knowing. Usually when I tackle a boss, even at a glance, there's something I can learn. Some notion I can follow that may give me just enough of an edge that I can push through, such as the twin princes teleporting behind you, or how the duo phase of the demon prince fight works. But here, I had no teacher. I perished, being hit again and again by the same mistake. Something was wrong, and gears began turning. The next attempt, I noticed something. After running away from its fire, instead of past Midir's body or trying to go through it, he laid his head down. Again, Midir rose, flew off, landed, and then laid his head down. Sweeping slashes, and as Midir rested, in front of me was his head. A pattern was forming, slowly, and within it, a tactic. Obviously, I died a few more times, but the popular belief of why Midir is the best dragon fight FromSoft has done started making sense. Now, of course, I haven't played Dark Souls 1 or 2 yet, but I have played Elden Ring. Midir is the best dragon fight that I've seen. Why? Because of how you fight him. This isn't a battle dictated by power, and there is no fluff or pauses. This is a battle of technical prowess. Can you keep your positioning in check? Do you know what move comes next? And above all, are you paying attention to the glory happening before you? Midir won't tantalize you with far-off tricks, instead consuming you into this battle of attrition with straight-up melee warfare. Midir is a beast, fit to kill under the guise of protecting the city. That same choir, brass and percussion, creating a regal air with some sense of finality and dread to it. A sort of exquisite torment that fits this character so well. Midir, corrupted by the same evil he was sworn to defend against, now mindless, a husk of itself, doing what it feels necessary, preventing an audience with the lady of this lost land. And my goodness, what a final stand Midir makes. Just look at how epic this attack looks as it stands on its back legs, laying waste to us ants at its feet. And when you're in it, this ferocity becomes so elegant, a dance. Every move is known, and you're not being asked to keep up. This fight was engineered to be learned and never forgotten. As I said, technical. In my mind, it felt no different than fighting Pontiff, Nameless King, or the like. Another finely tuned duel, but against an even more intimidating foe with an exhaustive health bar. One so large the entire time you're pushing back feels almost worthless, where biding your time only works against you. You will die, but so will Midir. Keep fighting. Don't stop fighting. Don't for a second think you can stop fighting, as your foe hasn't for hundreds, if not thousands of years before you. This is a matter of survival. Then you hit the second phase, and he starts summoning ghosts and turns even more purple. That same comprehension I lauded, now mixed, interspersed with the requirement to dodge not only Midir, but projectiles, watching for AoE tells, moves used to push you away, the comfortability and technique you mastered in the first phase, now questioned, jeering if you ever even knew what you were doing. And you know what? Mistakes are gonna happen. Mistakes that make you mess yourself a little. Nobody's perfect. And if we were, this part wouldn't feel so damn good. The music hitting its crescendo, finally culminating in a spurt of blackened blood, one final roar, and a dissolution to ash. I won. The dragon slain, adrenaline began to set in, not only because of victory, but because of witness the fruits of time, desolation, not but the passing reminders of what once was, destruction, brilliant light shines now on what will be, destiny, what comes before or after, meaningless, left only with why we are, lost now in time, that kingdom I'd learned, the souls I'd met and dangers subdued, that constant prying at my purpose. All this time, foiling Sullivan's schemes, freeing Ariandel, conquering the first flame, driven by fascination, as if mesmerized. And we all find ourselves here one way or another. That lapse where realizations settle in, a recalibration, if you will, imbued with faith. What drove me? What made me see this journey out? What made me recollect these thoughts? The answer, lying in ruin. An eternal dream, or so I thought, and how symbolic. It's melancholic to state, but this is what awaits. I can't make it much more poignant, not yet, at least, because there is just one more thing.
What still here? Hand it over, that thing, your dark soul. For my lady's painting.
Consumed by his own depravity, confronted by his twisted roar, the feast began. GAEL moved like a starved hound. So close to his meal, he struck with reckless abandon, jumping and dashing as leaps became slams, and the blunted edge of his blade struck and shattered rock around me. There was a weight to this fight, that unmistakable energy of challenge. GAEL finished me quickly, only flashing characteristic traits like the massive gouge in his stomach. But before I had time to even recollect, a fog wall, immediately partitioning the small tower, from what I just realized would be our battlefield, this entire dune of time. A match of cosmic happenstance, where Miyazaki took the adage, time is convoluted, to an extreme. GAEL, an interloper who partook in a hunt for the dark soul, spanning until the end of time, serving his lady even beyond the brink of sanity, and myself, the last explorer, destined to end this hunt, break this cycle, and chisel the last line of this epitaph. It was across the shifting sands this beast ran, a pursuit that wouldn't end until this lady had the dark soul. Flying, pounding, crushing, an ordeal not foreign to GAEL, as he seemed quite tacked at breaking necks now, falling upon mine, all the while emitting some pinkish haze, and it drew my eye to his cape. Warped, twisted, writhing faces, whose I did not know, but what I could infer, they were those consumed. For all GAEL's wickedness, the consumption of hundreds of beings, there is a strange reverence towards his willpower. Almost eclipsing time itself, GAEL remained, the lone survivor of a hunt that may well have cost the world. There had to be more.
Is this the blood? The blood of the dark soul.
A resounding crescendo, a coming storm, crashing lightning in the backdrop, and at its center, the dark soul. Now emboldened by awakened powers, GAEL stood and fought again like the knight he was, his cape becoming one with his mind. Just soak it in. The clangs of metal scraping rock, GAEL's grunts, almost a roar accompanying every action, the chanting an opera with such finely tuned reverb it almost rattles in your head, the click-clack of his crossbow, the camera's erratic movement as it pains to keep up, that crunch behind every step, the constantly mixing sand texture, the dramatic lighting, this unwavering freedom to run, but with no escape present, the atmosphere. Savor it, because this is the end. Our final duel. Not GAEL and I. You and me. This is the end. The last story I've got for you, at least for Dark Souls 3. It was only a matter of time until I talk about it. I've talked so much already. But it's not over. Not yet. Bask in it. The glory of invention, creation, the dedication to a craft to this point that spanned an entire trilogy. 5 long years of ideas, some succeeding, some failing. All of it wound down to this. The culmination of FromSoft's work at their fingertips, visualized for your eyes in GAEL. A resounding burst of this malevolent red, masquerading GAEL's ferocity with an alluring mystique, brutal and monstrous, yet elegant. The flow of his cape not serving as a weapon, but as an instructor. This fight, I'd never felt beaten or confused. A dance. I must sound sad, but the last dance. Where Midir questioned my technical ability, the Demon Prince invoked a tactical mind, and Halflight just existed, GAEL was a goodbye. One they wanted to last forever, through its innate difficulty, the punch of his hits, and a gaudy health bar. By now, I'd seen so much I harbored respect for these foes. I died, being outwitted, and another being prideful, but we all know how that story goes. I returned. GAEL finally fell, and I as well. Tired, the reality of this fight settled in. GAEL was Dark Souls. I know, what the f do you mean, but GAEL was Dark Souls. The essence of it, the final nail concluding this monument, a penultimate moment, the being consumed in his quest for it, giving us a boss fight that's perfectly emblematic of Dark Souls. I mean, seriously, what other fight is as poignant as GAEL? He is the final benchmark, your final task, and the perfect opposition for the skills you've acquired to this point. Dark Souls 3 and its DLCs were built for its fans. Not a cash grab existing only to prolong an IP's lifespan, but a representation of everything FromSoft learned and acquired through their fans' dedication. If it weren't for you, they'd be nowhere. Now, may the credits roll. I think most would say video games become stories, as grand as written fantasy, worlds defined by mathematical formulas rather than sifting through seas of words. But all forms of story share one structure. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Dark Souls 3's finality, even without context, hit like a truck. That singer, you notice. And that bell chime, remember. It all fell in line, what I'd seen. The end. But I'm glad. I'm glad I played it. I saw what it was that harbored such a cult following. I want it all. This was my journey. From the wall to the keep. Through cathedrals and catacombs, unto ice and ember. Where dragons slumber, it was there. Darkness held the world. Though the cold winds bite, the cinder never dies. In the first episode, I mentioned I didn't know the weight of my journey yet. Now I do. And I hope you felt it. Isn't there just a sort of mystique around endings? There's this mix of relief and sadness that washed over me when those credits rolled. An end to this. I fell in love with it. Clearly, and I'd describe it as an ultimate experience, but just a train of thought. Would Game of Thrones as a series have been better or worse without, let's say, the last 2 seasons? No conclusion. The show hangs in still air, purgatory, just another in a mix of shows that didn't get to see an end whatsoever. I find comfort in the thought there's an end, that what I'll see later matters, that there are no questions left in the balance, stories lost in translation. Imagine this, you're waiting in a desert, your footsteps sinking into sand, every muscle pushing you forward, the drag pulling against you as you trudge along, and the crashing of your soul as this desert consumes you again. And in front of you, there's no end. No bright shining tree, no giant castle, no lit up city. Just you. A world empty and vast, without direction. There is no visible end. A reality like that is crushing. One such feeling for me is Berserk, a story that hasn't seen its end, and may never. Time and entropy took its toll. Natural circumstance, sure, but forever will this energy be suspended. It has nowhere to go. Bottled up, bouncing around with no one to finally pull the cork off. Sure, they've been releasing chapters, and I am grateful and elated to read every new release and do, but it's different, obviously. There is no replacement for creativity. That's the beauty of it. That individuality every human holds so dear, the qualities that we know internally we're good at, even if it's not entirely useful, or even leading to a physical creation. It's still something. And when brought into question, art has a special way of being, where these masterclass illustrations not only entertain, but they draw you into this greater belief that something else exists. And for me, that's always been a lot of the fascination behind video games. The creativity, placed into a foreign setting unknown to myself, bound by laws and physics unique only to this world, and slowly, you become acclimated. You become an inhabitant, as if you live there. Somewhere that isn't real, that doesn't make sense. A dream. But in the real world, a dream can often be temporary, just a vision, not a fleshed out thought. You might awaken before it's over, or get sucked into something you didn't want to imagine. But worst of all, you forget. Here we have a unique opportunity, a video game, a work that can serve as an amalgamation of all the dreams, thoughts, and ideas the director and team strive to realize. One that can transcend any tumbles we're experiencing, one that can exist separately from what ails the world. A story unlike any we'd expect, where we're given control and asked only to trust what the creator says. And thank goodness, this one saw its end. Dark Souls 3 offered me whimsy, the childlike intrigue that I think we often find so fleeting. Most everything you see now, short, quick, trying to be funny, swipe on to the next fix. Our attention has cratered, and Dark Souls 3 struck a happy medium. It's not a long game, though you can take your time with it. It's all those punchy moments, seeing Irithyll, ringing the bell at Archdragon Peak, these short bursts where you felt the steps of all those people who worked on this before you. The perfect framing of the overworld here at Vort's bonfire, the peaking eclipse when entering Lothric Castle for the first time, all those hidden items, secrets kept from you because they knew you'd look. All these thank yous. What I mean is, it genuinely felt at points where the game was thanking you for playing. These epic moments and finds serving as rewards. It's not the first time I've felt this, won't be the last. Just something I picked up on, and something I'm always in search of. A sort of validation for the time spent, where the game just exists in your head, coming up time and time again. The desire. It's weird having these memories sometimes, even beyond Dark Souls, and correlating it with how much time has passed. In my eyes, there really isn't anything more valuable than memories, like personal movies for all our favorite moments. And here it were, another title to add. Memories of defeat, of success, of awe, of sorrow, of friendship. The weight of my journey, like any great video game, was the experience. Always an experience that shot me into a foreign plane full of horror, sadness, and glory. An odd fascination that made me want to conquer fears, the same sense that festers and grows in our minds, the one that makes you daydream and yearn for more. That warmth. Love. There just isn't much left to say. But there was one more task, GAEL's loose end, the completion of his life's work, the delivery of the pigment to his painter. And so, again meeting in Frida's burning chapel, words bound and wishes fulfilled, the painter said this.
I will paint a world of that name. It will be a cold, dark, and very gentle place. And one day, it will make someone a goodly home.
This was Dark Souls 3. I know I said it won't take till Friday, but anyways, I hope this was as fun for you to watch as it was for me to play. Up to now, I've gotten to New Game Plus 6, and am currently doing a co-op run with my buddy who recently got Dark Souls 3 after I begged him profusely for a little less than a month. Slowly but surely, I've been trying to get every one of my friends to play it. One has played it and beaten it. There's the one playing co-op with me right now, and another is holding out. Something about money. Yeah, right. But seriously, to leap into the sentimental side of shit, man. This game was really like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad, you know, where you start engaging it and you just kind of want and wish to have one person to talk to about it ceaselessly. Just all those moments where the world makes your jaw drop or your heart pump during some sort of encounter. And, you know, I'm eternally grateful that I got to record every step and, above all, share it with you. And recently there's been so many of you to share with just pouring in. 700 subscribers. I couldn't even celebrate 500. I hope you know I appreciate it. And I've talked a lot already, so I hope you have a good day, night, or evening, and I'll see you around next time. Bye-bye.